Welcome into CBS News 24/7. I'm Juliette Goodrich. We start in Vatican City, where 69-year-old Cardinal Robert Prevost became the first American pope in history. He was born in Chicago. He was elevated to cardinal by Pope Francis in 2023. He took the name Pope Leo XIV. Here's the moment crowds in St. Peter's Square cheered when they first saw the white smoke signifying a new pope was chosen. Let's take a listen. After the white smoke, a marching band and the Swiss Guard marched through St. Peter's Square to begin the process of welcoming the new pope. Let's take a listen. The Italian Guard also participated in the ceremony right before a cardinal said the two words the crowd was waiting to hear. Take a listen.
Habemus Papam.
The cardinal went on to announce that Cardinal Robert Prevost accepted the responsibility of leading the world's 4 billion Catholics and was now Pope Leo XIV. We are joined live now by Father Patrick Mary Briscoe, editor of our Sunday Visitor. Father Briscoe, thanks so much for joining me. Let's just first begin with your reaction to the announcement today.
It was incredible. I was stunned. I heard the name clearly and I couldn't believe it because I knew immediately that this was an American who had been elected. Of course, some people were talking about Cardinal Prevost before the election, but he really wasn't seen as one of the main contenders going into the election. So when we heard his name, for me it was just a total shock, but a moment of great joy and pride as an American.
Absolutely. Tell us more about the Pope and his background, Pope Leo.
Pope Leo, in choosing this name, has told us a lot about himself already just in the name. His predecessor, Pope Leo XIII, was the Pope who led us Catholics into the modern age. He had a fiery encyclical, for example, about Catholic social teaching, leading us, really challenging us to encounter the richness of our faith. That's what we heard in Pope Leo XIV, our new Pope's words, as he stepped out on the loggia. He said, "Peace be with all of you." He's going to be a pope who advocates for peace, he was telling us. And he directed us to understand what that peace means, that peace is really the peace of the risen Christ. He's telling us that he's a spiritual man, that he's rooted, steeped in our tradition, that he's allowing his vocation as an Augustinian, which is an important fact, that this pope is a religious. He's allowing this vocation as an Augustinian to flourish and to shine.
What can we expect to see from the Catholic Church under his leadership?
Well, it's hard to read these signs, but he did give us a little bit of sense. He came out dressed, for example, in the traditional mozzetta, the red shawl-like garment. Pope Francis eschewed that, famously appearing just in the white papal cassock on the balcony. And it seems that this signal is an important signal that he's not afraid to be his own man, that he had kind words for Pope Francis. He has a great appreciation of his legacy. But Pope Leo is telling us that he's going to chart a new course and that he's going to head out, and I think in some ways to be a kind of moderate, to bring the church together. We were hearing a lot of talk about unity before the conclave, and I think that's what we're seeing already in our newly elected Pope.
Father Briscoe, thank you so much for your insight. And you can see how excited the crowd was to hear the announcement, especially these people with their American flags. You can hear their excitement when they heard about the first American Pope. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Seth Dolan, spoke to people on the crowd.
The corner of my eye and saw these 3 Americans saying, "Is it an American Pope?" Oh, what are you thinking?
Never thought I would have seen the day that there would be an American Pope.
Yeah, especially now. We were not expecting this. I wasn't expecting it at all.
Like, I left work early. I mean, don't tell my boss, but I'm glad I did.
What does it mean to you as Americans to have an American Pope? What do you think it means? What do you hope it means?
I mean, it's great. I mean, we're feeling very patriotic, I guess. But I think we're still processing. I know,
it's still, like, it's so fresh. I mean, I just really hope that, like, this American Pope, he can, keep the train on the tracks rolling that Francesco did. The previous Pope, keep the church moving in the same direction. That's what I hope. I hope he makes people proud.
If I can summarize it, even there was a gentleman from Paraguay who was standing next to me. His mouth dropped. He said, "An American Pope."
Seth, thank you. Pope Leo XIV earned his bachelor's mathematics from Villanova University near Philadelphia back in 1977. Nuns at the private Catholic Research University cheered on the news this morning. Take a listen.
Here we go.
Pope Leo XIV also earned a diploma in theology from the Catholic Theological Union of Chicago. Joining us now, Dr. Anthea Butler, professor of American social thought and chair of the Department of Religious Studies at the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Butler, thanks for joining us. What's happening in the church today that set the stage for this choice?
I think what's happening in the church today is much more openness to thinking about how priests and bishops and the Pope engage the world. I think right now, with everything that's going on in the world, the church is still growing in certain places. And I think this is a signal that having an American Pope doesn't just mean that we're thinking about America, but we're thinking about the world. And I think it's been, quite a struggle when we have other voices in Catholicism in America that want to pretend that though they are the ones who can dictate what Catholics are all about. And I think this is an excellent choice in Pope Leo XIV.
As the first ever American Pope, what potential challenges might he face?
Well, I think one big challenge is going to be how to deal with America, actually. And I think that because he has been a person who has been over the Augustinians, has run the bishops' conference, I don't think it's going to be a problem in so as much as it will be a problem for some Americans who feel like they've been able to throw their weight around with the papacy. Now they'll have to think twice about this because now you have an American Pope. So what are you going to do? Are you going to try to tell the Pope what theology is when he's a canon lawyer? I don't think so.
So tell us more about the name Pope Leo and the significance of that choice.
Well, first of all, I think it's very interesting because he's connecting himself to the 19th century. And while that might sound to you like that's old, it's from he's following after Pope Leo XIII, who put down a very important document in the Catholic Church called Rerum Novarum. And that was about support for union people, for workers, and for everyone. And I think at a time like this, where we're looking towards people who want to eliminate workers, to want to destroy unions and all of this, I think it's a signal to us and to those of us who have been waiting for this in the church that we really want to put forth, and this Pope will put forth, Catholic social teaching as one of the first foremost things. I think it's really hard when we have articles that come out like, this Pope is going to have to be, basically a capitalist or something like that. And I don't think that's the story at all. I think the story is that this Pope is going to be someone who is actually thinking about the working class folks, people who are struggling, people who are doing things and trying to make an everyday living. And I think this is what's going to be so important about him. And besides that, his Chicago roots. Think about Chicago. That's a place where unions were. It's a place where people have been hardworking. And I think all of that is going to bear into what he is as a Pope.
Pope Francis was outspoken on a number of modern issues. So what does this choice say for the vision of the future?
I think that what he said today on the Loggia was very important. He gave a nod to Pope Francis in his remarks, in perfect Italian, may I add. And I think that what this means is that he wants to continue on that tradition, but he will also be his own person. And I think that's going to be an interesting way to look at this. I think the time that he spent in Peru is going to be really important to how he handles his papacy. And I think that what we're going to see is someone who continues like Francis, but will put his own space on things. He will be the person who really thinks about things. And I also think that, while people didn't think Francis was so much of an intellectual, he really was. I think this will continue in that intellectual tradition of Pope Francis.
Dr. Anthea Butler, thank you so much. Here in the United States, President Donald Trump reacts to the news of the first ever Pope from the United States. CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman joining us now. Hello, Willie. What can you tell us about today's announcement and the president's reaction?
Hey there, Juliet. Good to see you. Well, the president mentioned his congratulations earlier in the day on Truth Social, but we did catch up with the commander-in-chief who held an impromptu press conference, so to speak, about 5 minutes or so outside the West Wing. Listen to what he had to say.
And to have the Pope from the United States of America, that's a great honor. That's a great honor.
When are you going to welcome the Pope?
I'm watching, and they said he's from America. I said, that's great.
And I also want to mention the vice president is expressing his congratulations as well to the newly chosen Pope Leo XIV. He says on a social media post, he says, "Congratulations to Leo XIV, the first American Pope, on his election." He goes on to say, "I'm sure leading the church. May God bless him." We, of course, know that the vice president is a devout Catholic who visited with Pope Francis, then Pope Francis, the day before he passed away. Jules.
Willie, President Trump also unveiled a trade deal with the UK. It is the administration's first agreement with a country hit by his tariffs. Can you tell us about that deal?
Yeah, that's right. And the White House is describing this day as historic, one in which the partnership between the United Kingdom and the United States grows with this trade deal, the first trade deal that the president announced since he announced a series of tariffs targeting countries like China and other nations around the world, including allies, with those reciprocal tariffs. We, of course, know that the 10% reciprocal tariff rate stays in place, but the president discussed what this trade deal means earlier in the day from the Oval Office. Listen.
The deal includes billions of dollars of increased market access for American exports, especially in agriculture, dramatically increasing access for American beef, ethanol, and virtually all of the products produced by our great farmers. And our Secretary, as you know, of Agriculture is here. Brooke, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, sir.
You'll let the farmers know. In addition, the UK will reduce or eliminate numerous non-tariff barriers that unfairly discriminated against American products, but this is now turning out, I think, really to be a great deal for both countries.
Now, we know that American beef and chicken could potentially be sold to customers in the UK. The same will happen for meat producers in the UK to sell their goods here. But on top of that, Jules, there's also this auto tariff. Remember, there's a 25% auto tariff on foreign-made vehicles. Peter Navarro, the president's trade advisor, essentially described this new deal between the U.S. and UK as a discount, where those UK manufacturers like Aston Martin, Jaguar, Land Rover will be able to sell about 100,000 cars for a 10% tariff. After that, the 25% tariff kicks in. And the president also did mention ethanol. The reason why that is important is because that is produced here in the United States and used to make beer in the UK. So a lot more beer being made with American-produced ethanol there in the United Kingdom. But this trade deal isn't necessarily a done deal quite yet. They're still working out some of the details, especially when it comes to aluminum and steel and those agricultural products as well, Jules.
All right, Willie, thank you. Live look at the Vatican will have more coverage of American Cardinal Robert Prevost, elected to lead the Catholic Church. That's next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. A priest who went to seminary school with the newly elected American Pope remembers him as intelligent and compassionate. CBS News Chicago's Sabrina Franza sat down with Father Mark Francis to learn more about the new pontiff.
Father Mark Francis studied with Cardinal Robert Prevost. The two were seminary classmates at the Catholic Theological Union in Chicago from 1978 until 1982. They also both worked in Rome in the early 2000s.
He's not a showboat. He is very calm, but extremely intelligent and extremely compassionate.
What are your hopes for the next pope?
I think coming together as a Christian community that we're best able to read the signs of the times and figure out what we need to do as church.
Prevost is seen as a progressive on many social issues. Overall, many view him as a centrist. Like Pope Francis, Prevost has spent time embracing marginalized groups such as the poor. He has dual citizenship between the U.S. and Peru.
He's a person who's very sensitive and is concerned to allow everyone to have a voice.
Would that papacy look similar to that of Pope Francis?
It would be similar in terms of basic goals, I think. That the kind of style he would bring to the papacy would be calm, steady, very direct kind of guidance.
Sabrina Franza, CBS News, Chicago.
We're also hearing from students from a Catholic or a Chicago school. Here is CBS News Chicago's coverage from just moments ago.
I didn't know what it feels like. We know what it feels like to be a cardinal and shouting and screaming. He knows what it feels like to be Pope.
He's the first to be doing what he's doing. Like, this is the first and probably maybe only to be from USA. And it's really special that he's from Chicago. I think he's feeling a lot of joy, but he's also ready to take on the big responsibility of being Pope.
So you can imagine just what it must have been like at that school today when they learned the news. They said they actually were at recess at the time. They skipped recess to watch the news coverage, and it was just electric inside the school. They sent me some videos that maybe we'll be able to share later of all the kids chanting USA, USA, and Pope Augie there and his friend Cardinal Cameron are very hopeful that Pope Leo will make a trip home to Chicago someday.
I certainly hope. I'm curious now, Noel, if they were eating goldfish crackers.
A live look now at the Vatican, where thousands continue to celebrate the election of the new Pope, Leo XIV. We'll take a look at the challenges he may face as the new pontiff. That's next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Russia and Ukraine both report attacks on their troops on the first day of a 72-hour ceasefire. Russian President Vladimir Putin originally called for the stop in fighting as his country marks 80 years since its victory over Nazi Germany. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer has more from the Russian capital.
I'm standing in the center of Moscow, just yards from the Kremlin wall, and that's a sign of how much things have changed. Specifically, relations between America and Russia have thawed under President Trump, and American media organizations have been invited to Russia to witness a very grand spectacle. We had a little taste of it, a rehearsal. Tomorrow, the real thing happens. Russia rolls out its military hardware, its military might, in a parade that goes right across Red Square. A couple of dozen world leaders have arrived, the most powerful and prominent among them, China's President Xi Jinping. The leaders are here to watch the parade, of course, but also to show that President Putin still does have international allies and friends in spite of the widespread sanctions and the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. This celebration marks a very great Russian victory over the Nazis in World War II 80 years ago. It also deflects attention, perhaps, from the lack of victory in Ukraine. That conflict is raging, and Russian and Ukrainian soldiers are dying all the time. Now, President Putin has declared a 3-day ceasefire that starts today and will run through Saturday, but that just means that on Sunday, the fighting will resume. Back to you.
We are watching Wall Street, where stocks jumped as President Donald Trump unveiled a trade deal with the UK. So the Dow up about 250 points. Nothing was signed, but Trump says the final details are being written up. It marks the first major agreement since Trump slapped tariffs on nearly all U.S. trade partners. All right, so let's take a look at our interactive stock market heat map. This is brought to you by FinViz, showing the top 500 stocks. As you can see, there's a lot of green on the board after that announcement. So let's bring in CBS News contributor J.D. Durkin live at the New York Stock Exchange. Hi, J.D. Let's walk through the reaction on the markets today.
White smoke at the Vatican does not, in fact, mean a new trade deal necessarily, but perhaps for a busy news cycle like today, it might as well have been one and the same. We did get this highly anticipated announcement from the White House, of course, with regards to UK, a specific focus on steel, aluminum, auto exports as well. So we did see the markets pop nicely earlier into the session, but it is, of course, worth noting here into the close at 4 o'clock here on the East Coast. We did see a fair bit of selling, so we gave back a lot of those gains. To your point, the major market indexes finishing up in positive territory, and we saw small cap stocks, which we count in the Russell 2000, really leading the way, which tells analysts we had bit of rotation happening earlier today. A little bit more context on that UK deal. It is worth noting the United Kingdom is a country with whom we have a trade surplus with. In other words, we do not have a trade deficit. So if you're looking at the stock market today and wondering why, after finally getting a highly anticipated trade deal, we did not see more of a reaction, I would argue it's likely because Wall Street sort of already had this type of deal baked in. The question is for the vast majority of countries with whom we do not have that particular type of trade balance. But it's worth noting, otherwise on Wall Street, all 7 of the so-called Magnificent 7 tech companies finishing up into the green. Those shares were led by names like Tesla, Amazon, and Google. We saw 8 of the 12 sectors of the S&P 500 finishing up in positive territory. And today on Wall Street makes 11 of the last 13 sessions. We've had green on the big board.
All right, here's something that we really haven't talked about. Fast food chains, new numbers showing that the fast food chains are actually losing customers. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, declining same-store sales for Popeyes, for Burger King, for Tim Hortons. These are some of the biggest companies under Restaurant Brands International. And it's been a bit of a tough year for a lot of the fast food companies. I would argue what we heard out of the earnings call earlier today is really a continuation of what we've heard from fast food giants like McDonald's. They cite some weather patterns that kind of pulled back on consumer spending. But really what's emerging is the portrait of a consumer facing a little bit more distress than has faced in previous years, and maybe choosing to be a bit more choosy, if you will, pulling back on some of that discretionary income. We did see shares of Restaurant Brands International down only about 0.5% today, despite all of that downward pressure, and shares of the company are still up 3% since the start of the year.
Okay, so finally, JD, Toyota says tariffs are going to take a bite out of profits. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, of course, this is a Japanese-owned company. It's got huge exposure to the United States, and this was the type of automaker that analysts had been circling now for many months to say, keep your eye on a company like Toyota, because we will watch very carefully what the impact of the White House's tariff policy will be, despite the fact that it is a company that dual lists at the London Stock Exchange, also has a listing right here at the New York Stock Exchange, and it is Japanese-owned. The company still managed to sell more than 2 million cars in the U.S. last year, and so there are concerns that the sort of tit-for-tat or unpredictable path forward for tariffs are really going to hurt sales and ultimately hurt profits for the company. A weakening U.S. dollar is one of the other big stories. We are seeing the dollar down about 7% so far this year. That makes it really difficult on a company like Toyota when they make those U.S. profits to convert that money back to the Japanese yen. That money becomes worth a little bit less every time the strength of the dollar goes down. Shares of Toyota also finished down 0.5% today and are down about 2.5% from January 1st.
JD Durkin, as always, thank you so much. All right, jumping the map to Seattle, where 21 students at the University of Washington have been suspended and banned from campus for allegedly storming the engineering building. At least 31 people were arrested in connection to those protests. The pro-Palestinian protesters demanded the school cut ties with Boeing over the company's weapons deal with Israel. The school says significant damage was left behind after protesters entered the building and lit dumpsters on fire. At least one of the machines damaged retails for $100,000. The Trump administration is investigating the school for possibly violating Title IX. In Philadelphia, a second student has been suspended just days after an alleged anti-Semitic incident at the Barstool Sports Bar last weekend. The school says it became aware of a student that participated in an interview with a host that is known to produce extreme anti-Semitic content. So Temple University President John Fry condemned both incidents. 4 women have filed a lawsuit against famed Motown singer Smokey Robinson and his wife. They allege the artist repeatedly sexually assaulted them. The women, referred to as Jane Does, said they worked as housekeepers for the couple in their Los Angeles home. Robinson's attorney released a statement on behalf of the singer. He calls them vile, false allegations, and that the evidence will show that this is a method of trying to extract $50 million from an 85-year-old American icon. All right, a live look at Atlanta now. A dry day for now, but we are tracking some storms on the way. So let's get to meteorologist Darren Peck to fill us in on all of that. Dry so far, but don't let that fool us.
That's a great little window to see what it looks like in Atlanta.
Yeah.
It is a totally different perspective in terms of where Atlanta sits and that whole southeast part of the country for what's been a very rainy 2 days. Let's take a look at that part of the country from satellite. This is right now. This is live updating satellite. It's the latest imagery you'd have. First of all, you've got this big mass of clouds down here where, like Louisiana is. We've gotten 8 inches of rain in 2 days under that big mass of clouds, and it really hasn't budged much. Now, Atlanta sits over here. Sure, you had some breaks of blue sky, and there was some clearing. That's going to be short-lived. There's nothing too serious coming Atlanta's way, but there is more rain in this. Watch what happens when we remove what we're looking at on there in terms of what the clouds have to say. And you can see where that rain is. This is just the last 24 hours of radar. I just want you to see that for a little perspective. There was a bullseye there over the southeast and over parts of Atlanta. But when we put on the Futurecast and see what's coming next, now we see another busy day here. And there really will be a focus once again for the same part of the country. Look at the stalling system here, just sitting there and spinning. That gets us into like late Friday into Saturday. So there are flood watches already through southern parts of Louisiana. And as we can see here in this loop that's taking us from now through Saturday, there is more rain still to go there. That's from the rainfall standpoint and from the flooding concerns. So just real close attention to your surroundings should you be in that part of the country through the southern edge of Louisiana. Here's the bullseye today, not for terribly severe weather, but anywhere you see the yellow on the map, and that's kind of a focus going right through that part of, say, like Tennessee, northern Georgia, northern Alabama, more thunderstorms are going to be potential there. That basically takes us through tonight, Jules, and then things will start to quiet down. Everything will start progressing and moving out of that part of the country, but boy, it would have been nice if it did that today.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation and the warnings.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Darren.
Yeah.
All right. We'll continue our coverage of the new Pope, Cardinal Robert Prevost, a Chicago native. We're live in Chicago with reaction next. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Welcome back. All eyes on the Vatican, where Pope Leo XIV is elected as the first American pope. Here's the moment when white smoke poured from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel, signaling the cardinals had chosen a new pontiff to succeed Pope Francis. And thousands erupted into applause as the new pope stepped out onto the balcony in St. Peter's Square. Cardinal Robert Prevost chose the name Pope Leo XIV for his papacy. And you can see the energy and the excitement in the crowd. People gathered from all around the world for this moment. And to watch him deliver his first remarks and blessing. So listen to one woman's reaction to the news of the first ever American Pope.
You're crying.
I was a little bit excited, yes.
Why are you crying?
I don't know. It's exciting to be here.
What are you
I
feeling?
wasn't expected to be here today, seeing this, and I'm glad that he's an American. I don't know why.
Really? You're from Paraguay?
Yes, I don't know why. It's just a feeling.
Pope
right,
Leo XIV was born in Chicago. CBS News correspondent Ashar Krayashi joins us live from Chicago's Holy Name Cathedral. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's talk about the reaction there in Chicago.
Hey there, Jules. Well, as you can imagine, a lot of excitement, a lot of joy. I think the news is still traveling slowly outside of the Catholic circles. A lot of folks that we talked to here on the streets wondered why we were out here, and were surprised to hear that the new Pope is originally from Chicago. But we also spoke with some parishioners here who got word. It came around midday here, so noon Mass was already in play here at the cathedral, here at the church, and people found out during that Mass that he was going to be the new Pope. And one parishioner I spoke to said that she found out and she came by and was very excited, was actually pretty shocked by the idea that someone born in the United States would become the next Pope, but still a lot of excitement. At one point, of course, you know, reporters were talking to the priest inside the church, and they asked whether or not he was a Cubs fan or a Sox fan. There was speculation that perhaps he was a Northside supporter, but no firm confirmation on whether or not he is a Cubs fan or a Sox fan. Also, you know, one of the things we've heard today is from President Obama, who also said he sent his congratulations to a fellow Chicagoan, and that this was a historic day for the United States. So a lot of folks, even though he hasn't lived here in decades, still consider him a Chicagoan. One priest here said that as soon as he heard the new Pope was from Chicago, he looked out the window, he saw the sun, and he described that as coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. Jules?
I can only imagine what that was like for you as a reporter when you got that news bulletin that it was in your own backyard in Chicago. What was that like for you?
I was pretty stunned. I mean, we hear about, sort of the internal movings of what's going on in the conclave, and the idea that a pope that was born in the United States, not only born in the United States, but born right here in Chicago, seemed pretty extraordinary. So, I've covered the Pope before. I covered his trip to the United States when he went through Washington, D.C. and New York and Philadelphia, Pope Francis, that is. And so hearing that we have a Pope from Chicago is something that will be of pride for many Chicagoans. I was born and raised here, and it's pretty unfathomable that that's what's happening today.
Great local coverage. Thank you so much, Ashar.
Questo è il primo saluto del Cristo risorto, il buon pastore che ha dato la vita.
Lino Rulli, host of the Catholic Guy Show on Sirius XM, joining us now. So, Lino, you were struck by just how much the Pope used the word peace in his remarks. So what did his words mean to you?
Well, they meant, first of all, I'm shocked it's an American not speaking English. So they meant a lot to me as an Italian American to say, here we go, as he's talking about peace. But he opened by saying, peace be with all of you. So he wasn't saying something like at the beginning of the Mass where they go, peace be with you, and we say, and also with you, or and with your spirit nowadays. But there was peace be with everyone. And he said peace so many times, you didn't even have to speak Italian to go, all right, this man has a message. It's a message of peace. And he mentions it's not just for Catholics. It's not just for Christians. It's an idea for the world to bring peace to everyone and to walk hand in hand is exactly what he said.
Yes, a universal message. So what does Pope Leo XIV's selection mean to you as an American Catholic?
It means we're still in shock, quite frankly. When it was announced in the square, you could tell the people in the square were like, who? And there were people waving flags from all over the world, and there were a few people with American flags, and I think they weren't waving American flags because they thought we have an American Pope. They were waving flags because we're American Catholics, I assume. So they're waving these flags, and suddenly the cameras are poised on them to go, good job, you've got an American Pope. We've never had one. The election even of Pope Francis just 12 years ago, there were cardinals who said there would never be a North American Pope. Yes, Pope Francis was from South America. This year, it sounded like it was a little different. They were open to the idea, but honestly, no plans at all. It was not on my radar that it would be an American Pope, and if it was not going to be him.
Wow, surprises still do happen to us all. All right, Lino, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. So joining me now is Reverend William Lego, and this is really exciting when I heard this information. So Robert Prevost, you've known very well, and I would say it backtracks to the 6th grade?
Yeah, we started before religious orders would send Catholic priests to talk about vocations and becoming a priest, and the Augustinians of the Midwest province. We had a seminary high school in Michigan, and that's when we first met because we went on a seminary week during the summer. So that was our first encounter together as classmates.
Okay, so your reaction when you heard that your classmate from 6th grade is now named the new Pope?
Well, I was somewhat surprised, but not really shocked because he's very capable. Pope Leo now, I have to keep calling him Pope Leo, not Robert. I could call him Pope Leo. He had a very extensive ministry experience being the prior general of the Augustinian order, working in our missions in Peru, being part of the formation team. So he has a lot of world experience. So in that sense, he comes very well prepared to be the pontiff, to be the Pope, and he's very efficient. He's a good administrator. He also listens to people, and he takes time to discern and pray before he makes decisions. I think that's going to help him.
These are all great qualities for sure. So if you can you tell us about the new Pope that maybe a lot of people may not know? You can really go back into your Rolodex.
I've been asked that a lot by other interviewers and stuff. And the one thing that I kind of not tried to answer is because of the fact we're such different people, because remember, our more continual relationship was in the 70s and 80s. That's a lifetime ago. So my experience and his experience, but what I do remember of him is the thing of he listens to people, and he takes time making decisions, and he's respectful, and he has a sense of working with the poor and trying to bring people in communion, which is part of our Augustinian charism.
That's a nice answer. I guess I wouldn't want anyone to ask what I was like in 6th grade and those qualities. We've moved ahead for so many decades. You know, but he is on the younger side as a pope.
Well, the church has wisdom. So, you know, what am I going to say? You know, the Spirit was at work in the conclave, and the Spirit chose him. So hopefully that's going to be for a very special reason. We'll just have to pray for him and work with him as he begins his pontificate.
What are the days and weeks ahead like for him? What happens now?
You know what? I don't know. I've never been pope. I've never been considered to be pope. I am sure that because he was in Rome for a while, so I'm sure he has an idea, but I couldn't answer that question for you. I mean, it'd be a lot of responding to, you know, congratulation messages and stuff from all over the world, I would think. But other than that, I couldn't tell.
Well, I appreciate your honesty on that. Hey, you don't know.
Yeah.
So will you be reaching out? Will there be any kind of congratulations from your side? And, you know, hey,
well, I'll send
friend.
I'll send him a text or an email and stuff to see what happens. But yeah, I mean, you know, we're classmates, you know, on there, so we have a friendship and things. But yeah, so I'll reach out to him. But again, knowing the enormity of his role, you know, he has a different calling right now to lead the church.
Are you surprised that it is an American pope?
Sometimes, but why not us? Is my thing. Why not us? If the Spirit chose the best candidate, why not American?
Why not? Reverend William Lego, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, while news of the new pope is being celebrated around the world, these seagulls are actually stealing the show. Stay with us. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Developing right now, tensions in South Asia continue to rise as Pakistan accuses India of, quote, serious provocation after drone strikes from India killed 1 civilian and injured 4 soldiers. India's Ministry of Defense issued a statement saying the drone strike was in response to Pakistani forces firing at Indian military installations. This comes weeks after a terror attack on Indian tourists in Kashmir sparked a sudden border crisis over the disputed region. CBS News correspondent Chanel Kaufman spoke with India's ambassador to the U.S. on the escalating tensions with Pakistan. Here is part of their exchange.
So, Ambassador, let's talk about what happened in the last 24 hours, because yesterday you said the Indian government is seeking de-escalation. Then, of course, overnight, Pakistan launched their own attack on India, and then India fired right back. So is de-escalation still on the table, or is India now at war with Pakistan?
So what happened was after we launched our attacks on these terrorist facilities, in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir day before yesterday. At that time itself, we had made it very clear publicly, as also to our interlocutors in the US and the world over to our partners, that there was terrorist attack on India on 22nd April where innocent civilians were killed. We have carried out a response to that. That was the original escalation, original trigger. We have carried out our response to that day before yesterday. And we were clear that insofar as our response to terrorism is concerned, that part was closed at that time, until, of course, we did say that if Pakistan chooses to carry out any further escalation into our territory in support of terrorists. I think yesterday what Pakistan did actually conveys a very clear signal to all of us and to the rest of the world that they actually stand with the terrorist, not with the rest of the civilized world. So when they did yesterday a small action to engage our military, we carried out a proportionate response to that. I'll repeat that, proportionate and measured response. That's what it was day before yesterday to the terror attacks, where we very deliberately and consciously excluded the military facilities, excluded the economic infrastructure, excluded the social infrastructure. We were very, very careful about that. We were very measured and responsible about what we did day before yesterday. But yesterday, when Pakistan and terrorists tried to engage our military facilities, we carried out, again, a proportionate response to that yesterday. So we have always, we didn't start this. It was started by the terrorists on 22nd April. We did respond to those terrorists, excluding military, economic, social infrastructure. Pakistan tried to engage some of our military facilities yesterday, and we carried out a proportionate response yesterday.
But at what point does the escalation back and forth become a war?
I think you have to ask those who carried out the original escalation. From our side, I have repeatedly mentioned, just now, that when we carried out our action day before yesterday, there was that degree of finality to our action to the extent it was aimed at the terrorist. But then if Pakistan decided to escalate yesterday along with those terrorists, then naturally we had to respond. Day before yesterday, we exercised our right to respond. And that was, as I said, final. But if Pakistan chooses not to see that as a finality, then that's a question I think you need to direct to them.
Chanel Call will have more on this story in our next hour on America Decides. All right, here is at nuns at Villanueva University, where nuns celebrated their graduate being named Pope Leo XIV. The Pope has a degree in mathematics. CBS News Philadelphia has more on his connection to the area, and here's some of their coverage from earlier today.
The shock that really swelled over the workers here at the Archdiocese of Philadelphia as we were huddled with them watching the announcement. You know, white smoke meant to this news crew. I'm joined by Alan Wheeler behind the camera. We dropped what we were doing and we rushed over here to the Cathedral Basilica of Saints Peter and Paul. We went into the noontime mass that was in progress. A priest by the name of Monsignor John Savinsky was in the sanctuary distributing communion, and we realized that few in that congregation knew that there had actually been a decision. So the white smoke and about a 2-hour gap, and then we learn all of the ties that Cardinal Robert Prevost has to the Philadelphia Archdiocese. Someone texted me, hey, this guy lived in Delco for a short time. No disrespect, but a Villanova graduate, an Augustinian with numerous Augustinian educational institutions across South Jersey and the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. Monsignor Bonner and Archbishop Prendergast, St. Augustine Prep in South Jersey, in Hamilton, and of course Villanova University, an Augustinian stronghold. We heard from Bishop John McIntyre, who is an auxiliary bishop of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. He described the message sent in this election, that they chose a man whose life's work was to be someone who went to areas in deep need of faith. And he was a priest who missioned.
And that was CBS News Philadelphia's coverage. And while the Cardinals voted for Pope, the seagulls eagerly waited to see what kind of smoke would come out of the chimney. Check them out. They had a front row seat to history from the roof of the Sistine Chapel, were a prominent presence over the past 24 hours, giving everyone watching the chimney cam, as we called it, a chuckle. Those seagulls. America Decides is up next with Major Garrett. You are watching CBS News 24/7. We leave you now with live look at the Vatican.